Welcome back to Rough Draft, the Young Journalist podcast. I hope all you guys at home had a good St. Patrick's Day, or even a good Easter as well, because God knows how long it'll be before I post this. I'm here with Emer Moreau, the newly elected editor-in-chief of the University Times, one of Trinity College's student newspapers. So how's it going, Emer?
It's good. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so glad that we could do this shortly after both of us got made editor-in-chiefs of our respective things.
Yeah, congratulations.
It's a bit like that meme of Paul Rudd just going look at us, who would have thought it? Who would have thought we'd do it?
That's a very good way of putting it, gosh, yeah.
Yeah, congratulations to you as well. So to just kind of jump into things, you study psychology and English literature. So when exactly did you know that you were interested in journalism and you wanted to get involved with the University Times?
I suppose it was becoming a journalist was one of those things that I sort of thought about when I was a teenager. But I sort of put it away. Then I came to Trinity and I signed up for UT in first year. And I wrote a couple of features, I wrote a couple of opinion pieces, but I sort of tried my hand at news writing, and I think it was pretty clear to the editor at the time and to me that was kind of where my strengths lay. So I was made news editor in second year, and I suppose that was quite a jump. But I loved just sort of the frenzy of it all. I loved being involved with the kind of the decision making behind the news stories. I loved, learning how to build sources, learning about how newspapers worked. And that summer as well, I interned in the Irish Times. So that was kind of when I thought, oh geez, I could make a career out of this. I suppose remains to be seen. It's a tough industry to break into, but yeah, that's what I'd love to do. That's the road I'd love to go down.
Brilliant. And did kind of your course help you much in terms of writing abilities and stuff like that, do you think?
It's a weird one, yeah, because English and psychology are kind of an unusual combination. English writing is kind of here's my point and here's why I'm right sort of thing. But then psychology, there's a lot of it seems to be the case that, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, but it's much less definitive. But certainly psychology is a social science, so I would have a lot of insight into, I suppose, the scientific process, the scientific method, how research is done, how, scientists and researchers come to conclusions. And I think that is something, especially with the pandemic, having even a basic understanding of how that works is really, really helpful when you're covering, a university which is producing research and things like that.
Yeah, that must be a kind of a great angle to kind of see things from and to write from, that kind of sort of sensibility. I remember just for the past year, we've had quite a few guest lecturers in to my my modules, and it was so funny because we'd be talking to investigative reporters for the Irish Times, or just people that had even written full books of just journalistic work, and we'd do a little Q&A to see how do they get so successful. And then the first thing they'd be yeah, I didn't actually study journalism. I did business, and then I did this, and then I just ended up in journalism. And we're wow, it's so useful. It seems as though we've already got off to the wrong start in our careers by studying the actual journalism. But yeah, it's such a great sort of career thing that you don't have to actually study it to be good at it. It just kind of, if you can approach that kind of career from a lot of different directions.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a craft, journalism, I think. I have learned so much from doing things, even things like learning, various aspects of the UT style guide. You kind of write a piece and then someone would edit it and they'd say, oh, by the way, this is how we do this style thing, kind of thing. So it's just learning by doing, I think, is so important. I don't have any experience of studying journalism formally, so I can't say whether it's good or not. I'm sure it's great. I've heard great things about the DCU journalism course. But I think the more hands-on experience you can get, the better. In my experience.
Definitely. And when was it, or was there even a time that you decided at the University Times that you want to be the editor-in-chief someday? Do you remember any kind of Eureka moment, or was it just kind of a gradual process of deciding this kind of thing?
Well, I was promoted to deputy editor in December. So from there it was kind of well, what would the next step be, I suppose it's a job that I'm so excited to take on, but it is quite daunting as well. You're essentially giving up a year to sort of throw yourself at this thing. And I think like the next few months will be quite a steep learning curve for me. But yeah, I suppose like when I was made deputy, I kind of thought, oh geez, maybe I could take it to the next level, you know?
And so I don't know how much of a unique thing this is for Trinity, but of course, you know, you ran for election to get to that job. Like, is it a lot different, do you think, kind of the way you approach things? Because obviously you had to appeal to like a broad sort of the entire student body of Trinity for votes, people that might not be that interested in journalism, or they might not have even really read much of the University Times' content before. Do you think that was kind of a challenge, just kind of having to sell yourself and your skills to just thousands of people?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd never, consider myself a politician, so having to stand for election didn't, I suppose, come particularly naturally to me. But I suppose the big thing for me was like a huge part of my manifesto was just explaining to people, you know, why journalism matters and why UT matters and why we should, you know, fund this newspaper, you know. I think like, you know, I like journalism has come into so many conversations and stuff in the past couple of years, but I think people are willing to sit down and listen to what journalists have to say. I like it. It is quite an unorthodox, you know, appointment process in that the editor has to be elected. But I suppose like it does make sense in that, you know, you're like students, you know, are funding the paper essentially. So I think it is important that, you know, the editor is transparent and the editor, you know, there is an understanding that the editor is there to serve the students, and you know, that everything is kind of, you know, the students have a say in who is ultimately dictating the journalism that's being carried out for them. Like it was an interesting experience, but certainly not something that came particularly naturally to me, but it was interesting and it was enjoyable. It was an experience, you know.
I mean, yeah, I remember one of the ideas that I had whenever I was trying to get to my position was just wanted to just hang out on campus for a full day and just talk to different people about what do they know about DCU's student newspaper, the College View, what would they like from their paper, that kind of thing. Don't even know if that's because I want to please the student body, or maybe I'm just so starved for physical contact with people I would just gladly shake hands with strangers in the campus all day. But yeah, I mean, I bet I did have it a bit easier than you, just kind of getting like appointed undemocratically like some kind of dictator. It was a bit convenient. So yeah, you mentioned how like the University Times is kind of unique in some ways, like in terms of the sort of editorial hierarchy or like the structure of the different positions within the University Times. Like, would you be able to break that down, like the news jobs?
Yeah, so the editor is the only full-time member of the staff, so they are technically a sabbatical officer of the students' union, like the president or the education officer. And then the second in command would be the deputy, which is the position I hold now. So, you know, I would do a lot of consulting with Cormac, the editor, about, you know, different editorial decisions, different just issues that come up with the day-to-day running of the newspaper. And then you have two assistant editors as well, who would do, you know, essentially the same job, just on a less, I don't know, extreme intense level. I don't socialize much. But so those four, the editor, the deputy, and the two assistants, would be the senior masthead is what they're called. And then we call the various section editors masthead. So you would have your news editor, features, sports, opinion, and we have an Irish language editor, we have a copy editor, and we have a magazine and a cultural supplement called Radius. So all those people are kind of in charge of specific sections. They would, you know, oversee all the work that goes into the section, the pieces that are published. But a huge part of being section editor, and like when I was news editor, this was a huge part of my job, was mentoring new writers, and teaching them, you know, the writing style of your own section. And, you know, because people kind of like you say, like a lot of people don't even know, they might know UT exists, but they might only have a vague idea of like what the paper does. So someone might come to me as the news editor and they might want to write sort of a feature or an opinion style piece, but they don't really know, like they don't really realize the breakdown, the different sections. And I think there is a bit of a lack of understanding in Ireland about how newspapers work. I don't know if that's just because the Leaving Cert just teaches us to kind of regurgitate everything, but it is something I've noticed. But, you know, if someone comes to me who wants to write an opinion piece, I say, hey, that would be under the remit of the opinion editor. I do news. This is what we do. If that sounds interesting to you, I can help you out, mentor you, kind of thing. because like news writing especially is a very specific specific writing style. But I loved kind of coaching less experienced writers and seeing kind of the ideas they had, and I love seeing people getting involved in different sections. Like, it's just so exciting when people are kind of, you know, finding a section that they really really like in the paper and getting more involved and meeting people and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree completely there. It's refreshing to hear that, at least in terms of structure, you know, the two papers aren't that different. You know, we're not so different, you and I. At least that'll make the rest of the interview more easy for me to understand. But I love there where you're saying, oh yeah, it's kind of like less extreme journalism what they do, with like the implication being there is extreme journalism, because I'd love to sign up for that. You're just bungee jumping, like taking down like notes in a notepad.
Well, like, it's extreme in the sense that like I would be on the phone to Cormac like multiple times a day, you know, and like that's kind of the understanding when you're the deputy. It's you're giving that time up, you know. But like, it's incredible experience, you know. I don't regret it, you know, giving up the amount of time that I give into the paper at all.
Definitely. And so, would you be able to walk me through some of your election promises, or your policies, because they were very you know, very like innovative, good ideas in my opinion. You know, that's probably, I'd say most of Trinity would have agreed with me, because otherwise, you know, you wouldn't be elected. But I mean, the ethnic minority correspondent and the, you know, diversity and inclusion committee, like they sound like, you know, brilliant pushes forward.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I suppose like it was really important to me that everyone in college is aware that UT is open to them if they want to write, you know, and that includes anyone, you know, anyone who has a disability, kind of students of colour. And then another kind of cohort was students with a lot of contact hours. So maybe medicine students or, you know, students in science, like they would have much more lecture hours than me, who has about 12 hours of lectures a week, you know. So I kind of wanted to make it very clear that like, if you are a medicine student and you want to write for the paper, but you can't afford to give up 10 hours a week, like we will accommodate you, we will help you, you know. And then the thing with the diversity and inclusion committee and the ethnic minorities correspondent is like, you know, I'm sure you know, like Jamie, like journalism in Ireland is just not representative of the population at all. You know, it's predominantly white, it's predominantly, you know, middle class. There are some progress is being made in terms of gender, but like we're still a long way off. And disabilities as well, like there are very few journalists with disabilities, and we need to have those people in newsrooms to tell their stories, you know, to highlight these issues that, you know, a straight white woman might not realize is happening, you know. So I thought it was important that we had a specific position where, you know, people of colour can get involved, and they can write about issues that are facing, you know, Trinity students of colour, or like students of colour in higher education in Ireland, in a way that suits them, in a way that they're comfortable with. Because I was aware as well, and it was something that came up a good bit during hostings, that, you know, if someone doesn't want to write about something that upsets them, that maybe they've experienced, you know, racial abuse, whatever, we need to accommodate that, and we need to be understanding of that, and we need to figure out a way to tell these stories while making sure that the journalist telling them and the journalist covering those issues is comfortable. And I suppose the Diversity and Inclusion Committee was kind of an extension of that, so that we can ensure that all of these underrepresented voices are being heard, and the stories that we're telling them, you know, we're telling them in the best way possible, we're using the right language, we're talking to the right people. And then I suppose other operational issues, like the building that we're based in, House 6, is not accessible. There's no lift. It's one of Trinity's old buildings in Front Square, if you can picture that. And like it comes up every election year, like, are you going to work to either move UT out of House 6, or are you going to get a lift into House 6? Because the Students' Union is based in House 6 as well. And I think the current president is looking into getting a lift in there. But like in the short and medium term, we have to have other solutions if a student in a wheelchair wants to go to a meeting and can't get up, because we're like above ground, we're not on the ground floor either. So we have to look at those kind of things, you know, how do we accommodate students in wheelchairs? How do we accommodate students with other disabilities, like autism, like, I don't know, epilepsy, any kind, like, because I've worked with students with people with disabilities, just in various jobs that I've had, and like no two people with autism are the same, never mind two people with two different disabilities, you know. So you have to be cognizant of that, and you need to have those voices in the room, because as an able-bodied person, or as a white person, or as a straight person, you just don't know what that's like, you know. So you need to talk to those people, you need to give them the voice to tell the stories themselves, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm glad that the University Times is somebody over there to like champion those issues. So yeah, I hope that lift issue is accommodated soon, but I've a lot of faith in you there, I guess. And yeah, as well as that, so I noticed that the University Times stopped its like physical run of papers this year, you know, because of like, was it because of COVID, or was it because just it was kind of a change in viewpoint for the paper?
No, it was because of COVID. So we just figured, like, if there's no one on campus to read these newspapers, you know, like the print facility that we use, like they print in multiples of 1,000. So it wasn't like we couldn't just produce like 100 papers just to have them for the few students who were on campus. So we just made the decision to suspend the print run while there is no one on campus. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely a great idea. Like that's basically what we did up on the north side of Dublin.
Yeah.
And so you wanted to bring back physical papers, but to like a limited extent to what they would have been before COVID. So I think the number was about 6 roughly. Was am I right there?
Yeah, 6 is the plan at the moment. Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously arguments to be made there about, you know, like online journalism and which way to take the paper. But the one thing I think we could probably all agree on is that there's no better sight than a first year picking up a newspaper that they've just been published in for the first time and just going absolutely mental.
Oh my God, like I still remember it. It's just the best feeling ever. Like I took home a copy of the UT the first time I got published in print, and it's just like I felt like I felt way more important than I was. But like it's so nice. Like the print edition, you know, I hear the arguments for getting rid of it. Like I really do, and I absolutely understand that we have a duty to be environmentally conscious, but I just don't think the appetite is there to get rid of print completely. You know, like my opponent was advocating for an entire discontinuation of the print run, but I just don't think students kind of picked up on that. I think people understand the importance of funding journalism, and I think, you know, there is kind of like, I think students in Trinity are proud to have a newspaper that they can say they funded and is producing exceptional journalism, you know, and I think the print issue is part of that. And like you say, like the physical presence of the paper on campus is huge for recruitment, you know, getting people involved and letting people know we're there, whether that's as a reader or a writer.
You guys wouldn't have had the same problem because, you know, it seems like there's a bit of a more professional setup down in House 6, but for us this year, our entire work over the past year has been completely online, and then we had an issue with our site and we lost quite a lot of it. And I mean, I'm gonna be editor-in-chief, and right now there are only 4 physical articles that exist that I have written because we've lost so much of our online.
That's terrible.
Yeah, we're just, you know, we're working on that there. But yeah, you mentioned there about your rival or your opponent in the election race, and I mean, you won 83% of the votes, which, I mean, obviously quite a lot of that would be because of, you know, your good ideas, obviously, like the minority correspondent and the diversity and inclusion committee and etc. But do you think maybe some of your overwhelming success could be due to the fact that, you know, as the University Times put it, he's sort of a far right type figure?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, like my opponent was a writer for the Berkey, which is I mean they kind of, like, my opponent even disputed what the Berkey is over the course of the campaign. You know, people referred to it as a conservative publication or a far right publication, and he rebutted that, saying it was a free speech publication. But I suppose a lot of the stuff that the Berkey has put out over the past couple of years is quite you know, from the distasteful to the questionable to the offensive, you know, and I think people were aware of that, and people, I suppose, just didn't really want to see someone from the Berkey leading UT. And I suppose, you know, I don't know what else to say about that other than, you know, the people have spoken. And I suppose I'm looking forward now. You know, I'm excited for the next couple of months. It's going to be a steep learning curve until the changeover in June. But I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to the next year. I'm not really dwelling on the campaign too much at this stage. You know. Yeah,
I mean, it's all in the past now. Time to look to the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I noticed that, like, shortly before the election, the University Times had a little horoscope of the different candidates, and they managed to predict that as a Leo you would fit in a leadership role with ease. Do you think that maybe your fate was kind of, you know, written in the stars, so to speak?
Yeah, that the horoscope thing has turned into a bit of a tradition coming up to the election. I feel like it's good crack, you know. Like I'm definitely not above the odd kind of flippant or lighthearted article from time to time. Yeah, astrology. I don't look into it too much. I know Leos are supposedly very strong and assertive and leadership worthy. I mean, again, as I say, the people have spoken. You know, my peers have deemed me suitable for this role. I think I have the experience, certainly. And I mean, I'm happy to run with that.
Brilliant. I mean, as my dad always says, there's two kinds of Leos. One is suited for leadership jobs, and the other leaks confidential documents. Little politics joke in there for all you for all you listeners. So as a bit of a change of tone there, you mentioned there's going to be a bit of a learning curve, of course, in the next few months. But aside from that, what do you think would be kind of like the biggest challenge going forward for the university times?
For the paper in general, gosh, I mean, I suppose it's just ensuring that we're delivering, you know, high quality, factual, timely journalism in an age where, and this sounds incredibly cliched, I realize, I suppose in an age where journalism is being valued less and less, you know. I think, like, as I said, you know, we're funded by the union, but we're constitutionally mandated to be editorially independent of the union. And, you know, there are scenarios where we publish pieces that people in the union don't like, or that, you know, students take issues with, and that's fine. Like, I'm very open to kind of, if someone has a legitimate concern or complaint about a piece, like, let's talk about that, you know, get in touch, let's have a chat. But it's very easy to kind of mouth off on Twitter. I'm sure you've experienced this as well. You know, it's very easy to just kind of quote tweet something and say something mean about it. And, like, if I took every mean tweet to heart, I wouldn't get anywhere, and the paper wouldn't get anywhere. So I think it's learning how to navigate kind of the cesspit that is Twitter, while also ensuring that you're doing what students are electing you to do, and ensuring that, you know, everything you do is transparent and fair and equitable, and you're giving, you know, ample opportunity for people to respond if they're being kind of painted in a certain light in a piece, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that could be a challenge going forward. But I'm excited to take it on, and I think, you know, I do think there is an understanding, and like with the election, I do have a lot of faith in Trinity students, so they understand where UT is coming from, even if they don't like every single piece it publishes, you know.
Great. And this is going to sound like some sort of journalist for Marvel talking to Tom Holland or something about trying to leak some information, but are there any projects or any big things in the works for the university times that you might be able to give us a little hint as to, without fully giving yourselves away?
Well, one thing I had in my manifesto is launching a dedicated online Irish language publication. I speak Irish. I'm hesitant to call myself fluent, but I do, and it's something that's very important to me. And like, even this week we had a piece, the USI did a survey that found that the majority of third level students have a positive attitude towards Irish and think that Irish should be compulsory in school, which I think is in conflict with another study that was done a while back that said most second level students don't think Irish should be compulsory in school. And I think attitudes towards Irish, certainly in Trinity, I don't know about DCU or other colleges, but like there is quite a positive disposition towards Irish in Trinity, and I think like we could really harness that kind of positive attitude and encourage more people to speak the language and to write in Irish, even if they think they're not fluent, you know, because like I wouldn't be particularly confident with my own abilities in the language, but going to Irish language meetings, like, people are so helpful, and I think a lot of times you're better than you think you are with these things. So I'm really excited to expand the Irish language content of the paper, and just kind of make Irish more visible, I suppose. Because if the future of Irish is in universities and not schools, I think we need to move with that. We need to keep up with the times, you know? Yeah,
that's great to hear. Like, I agree 100%. I mean, unfortunately, we got rid of our Irish section of the College View last year, but, you know, with all hope, I would be bringing that back. I mean, I'd love to personally get involved, because, like you said, I wouldn't necessarily call myself fluent. I wouldn't go that far, but I like to think I remember a thing or two from school.
Exactly. Yeah.
If only I had the time. I mean, I remember having to bump into a few of my secondary school teachers in my town one night on a night out, and they're asking me about college, and they're like, "So how do you find DCU?" "Oh yeah, tá sé go hintach agus conna sa bhfuil do cursa." "Yeah, tá sé go hintach." You know, one of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's brilliant. And I was wondering either with, I know you've been published in the Irish Times and the Journal before, but either with either of those publications or with the University Times, what would you say would be like your favorite story that you've worked on, or maybe just the story that you're like most proud to have your name underneath?
I suppose if I had to pick one, we did a survey of 100 Trinity academics at the start of the year to do with the Provost Election. So Trinity is electing a new provost or president this year. And we asked them what they thought the three most important issues were in the election. And the stuff that came up has been like the subject of considerable debate as the campaign has progressed. So we kind of went in thinking, oh, they might say climate change, or they might say gender equality, or they might say, you know, these big kind of esoteric issues. But the overwhelming majority said that things like admin problems, things like bureaucracy, like not knowing who's making decisions, and then kind of as well, a lot of people said that they felt like Trinity was moving away from its core values as a university, as a place of learning. And that has come up again and again. You know, I've been covering the hustings that the three candidates have been doing. So I like that was very much a joint effort. Like I absolutely can't take all the credit for that, but like I was very proud to have kind of coordinated that because I am sort of leading the provost elections. And it, like, I suppose that's another thing about kind of getting to those more senior levels in UT is just seeing other people come on and seeing other people who you've seen write their first piece and then they're off doing all these things, reporting for different sections, whatever. It's just so nice. Like there's just such a collective sense of, you know, cheering each other on in UT. It's very wholesome.
Great. I mean, obviously, if you're leading the provost coverage, you wouldn't be able to give me like a personal comment on this, but I just remember writing an article a while ago about the situation with, hopefully I get this name correct, Dr. Sarah Lynn Stacey. I doubt anyone listening that's not from Trinity will care to hear this next bit, but I was just wondering, like, it's strange, isn't it? You know what I mean? Is it difficult to cover that kind of sort of a bit contentious type of situation when you're so close to it yourself? Because I mean, obviously it would have been more challenging for you guys down in Trinity than it would have been for, you know, me or for any other student publication across the country.
Yeah, well, on the flip side, I suppose, like, you know, you would have sources in Trinity who kind of know what's going on. Like, I do think one thing I've learned from the coverage of the provost elections is, like, Trinity people love to gossip, like the academics and the lecturers. So you would kind of hear kind of whispers and this, that, and the other. And I suppose it is just a case of getting it confirmed and hearing it straight from the horse's mouth and ensuring that you have your facts right before you go. But yeah, like, I suppose the Sarah Lynn Stacey thing, like, we were kind of making the point that, like, it's like the provost elections are not the most democratic. You know, only certain academics get a vote. Any kind of non-academic staff don't get a vote, like technical staff, professional staff. Students get something of a vote, but like it wouldn't be enough to sway the race unless it was very, very close. So all these kind of things come up, and, you know, as I said, like, a lot of academics said that Trinity bureaucracy was something that they really wanted to see addressed. So like it is very exciting. Like, some of the stuff that goes on is just bonkers, and the Sarah Lynn Stacey thing was kind of an example of those stories that you write it and you just can't really believe what you've just written, you know. So it's a lot of fun to cover, but yeah, like it is kind of a test in, I suppose, just making sure you have all your facts right and making sure that you have every side of a story before you publish, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even just writing it myself, the bureaucracy really struck me as I was like, oh, so this is the interview committee, and then this one is the council of whatever that oversees this part of the process. Oh god. It was like that scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with like the guy with like the 100 different little pins on the wall connected with thread, and I'm trying to work out the whole situation.
That's exactly it, yeah. And I think part of your job as a student paper, or I suppose a local paper, is communicating that to people. So like, you don't want to insult people's intelligence, but you do need to have a certain sense of, like, you know, I'm so wrapped up in Trinity politics and stuff now that I would say things like university council and not even give it a second thought. But like, not everyone knows what university council is, you know. So it is important that you kind of insert those little, you know, nuggets of information, like, this is what university council does, this is what the interview committee does, in your work, you know. Like, the worst thing you can do is just have it so full of jargon that people switch off, because then you're not doing your job, you're not informing people.
I recall writing quite recently actually about Trinity's sort of examination into their past with like the British Empire and slavery and all that, and just the different like this research will be overseen by this committee and also these two people, and there's going to be a student researcher and X, Y, and Z, and it's actually quite funny. I was pitching that idea, and someone just joked like, "Do you wish you were in Trinity or something? It seems like you're always covering them." It's just like, I'm a big history nerd, and it's much more fun to write about that kind of thing with Trinity versus DCU, which has been around since like the mid 70s. You know what I mean? We don't have connections to the British Empire for better or worse. Like it'd be interesting if we did, but sure, whatever.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, Trinity is however 500 odd years old. I'm not good at maths. But like when you have those really old institutions, like as you say, like they can have these really fascinating and sometimes potentially ugly histories. So that's like, that is a huge part of the job when you're a journalist in Trinity. But also like Trinity has a lot of very strange traditions and kind of ways of doing things. Like I don't know, your listeners might know that like the graduation ceremonies are all done in Latin. So like that's the kind of thing that you think about it for a second time after just becoming used to it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's really weird. And sometimes those things can stray into screwing students over and making decisions that harm students. So like again, it's just all part of making sure that the powers that be know that we're keeping an eye on them. And if you make a decision that's going to harm students, we're going to make people aware of that, and people will maybe fight to change that, but it's our job to make sure the information is at least out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you would have kind of I'd say a fairly unique perspective as a journalist, and it's not that unique because I mean obviously there are other journalists in Trinity, but I mean unique to me and people that I would be normally talking to. But as a journalist that deals with kind of communicating things to the wider public, and also somebody at Trinity, do you think that this kind of stereotype or preconception about Trinity College as like a place that's kind of closed off and a bit posh and kind of up itself is do you think is there any accuracy to that? I mean, just whenever you mentioned the Latin graduation, that's the first thing I thought of. So maybe it's kind of an automatic thing for non-Trinity people. It just sets off alarm bells. But do you think there's any weight to those kind of stereotypes?
Well, I suppose I'll put my science psychology cap on and give you kind of the numbers. Like there was a survey done last year, 2020, that found that not only does Trinity have the highest proportion of students from kind of designated affluent areas of all universities in the country, it also had the joint lowest proportion of students from designated kind of areas of socioeconomic disadvantage. So yeah, like I do think there's some truth to the stereotype that certain socioeconomic classes go to Trinity. I mean, I do think it's something the college is aware of, and if you look at the Trinity Access program, like that's been a pioneer over the last couple of decades with making Trinity accessible to more people. And basically, it's like your listeners might be familiar. It's they have a foundation year for people, and there are no kind of entry requirements. You don't even have to have done the Leaving Cert, but you do your year, and then you can get into Trinity if you pass the year, and you can do your normal degree like everyone else. But they've expanded it to work with kind of schools, because they realized, like, they looked at kind of sociology research, and like if the kind of class divide in higher education begins long before people fill out their CAO, so they're working with schools to try and change that. And now that the TAP model has been actually emulated in it's either Oxford or Cambridge. Oxford, Lady Margaret Hall College is launching a similar program, which is basically modeled on the Trinity Access program. So I think Trinity is working to change it, but yeah, like, I mean, the numbers are there, like Trinity probably is not representative of the wider population. I don't have all the answers to that, but again, like, it's my job and it's the University Times job to highlight those discrepancies and kind of ask the university, what are you doing to change this,
Yeah, I remember reading about the access program being sort of modeled in abroad, a lot of prestigious places. I mean, there is, I guess there would be that kind of the issue with diversity and including like different kinds of people, but sure, I mean, at least Trinity has somebody there setting up a diversity and inclusion committee for the paper, so they're not too bad, I suppose. And like a complete 180 from that. I noticed that you've work published in the Journal.ie and the Irish Times. Like, so what was that like, getting your stuff published, and how did it come about?
It's pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I've been, especially the Irish Times, like I've been reading the Irish Times for a long time, so it was very, very nice to be asked to apply for an internship there. It's kind of overwhelming because like you see all these people and you've read their names in the newspaper for however many years, and then you just meet them in person and you're just chatting with Conor Pope over coffee at like 11 o'clock. It's insane, but like it's incredible learning experience. And like I was in the Journal, I freelanced for them a little bit when I was in second year, but then they asked me to help them out with their election coverage, and obviously like being, you know, in a newsroom during an election is just the best time to be in a newsroom. So I helped them out a little bit to compile their candidate database. And then on the count night, I just, like, we had like, you know, we had tweet decks set up, we had TVs on, we had radios on, and basically as soon as any information came in, we put it onto the website. And it was just so exciting. Like it was just, you know, reporting it as it happened, you know, and like, it's obviously, you know, like the Irish electoral system is as such that like reporting and the count night is almost like a sport, you know, like a spectator event. Like it's so exciting, and these transfers are coming in, and is this candidate going to transfer well from this candidate, and like it's bonkers, but it was just so much fun, you know. And like everyone in there was so helpful and so kind. So yeah, they were both places were very, very good to me. Yeah,
you have me jealous now hearing about that election. I hope the current government just falls apart sometime in the next few months so I get the chance
so you can go back. Yeah.
And I was wondering like, what would you say would be your, maybe it's going to be hard to narrow down, but I was wondering, what would you say would be your favorite thing about student journalism?
I think the best thing for me is, like, I was quite a nerd in school, and I would have read the newspaper. Like I said, I've been reading the Irish Times since I was like 10, which is awful, but whatever. And you know, like I would have watched the news every night with my parents, but like a lot of people, like a lot of girls in my school didn't. I went to an all-girls school, and they were kind of like, why do you watch the news? You know, but then you go into college and you can go into a news meeting or you can go into a features meeting and be like, oh, did you see that article in the New Yorker last night? And someone else would say, yeah, oh my God, and we can have a conversation about that. And I just thought, like, that was just so exciting. And I think that's kind of a universal thing in college, that you can kind of find your tribe and you can find people with as niche or as nerdy interests as you. But that was such a big thing for me, just being able to just have nerdy chats with people about politics or about the way this newspaper covered this story versus how this, you know, how CNN covered it, kind of thing. And then like fangirling over journalists that we liked, kind of thing. So yeah, like I think just meeting people in UT, meeting people with similar interests, is the most enjoyable part of it. And I mean, like the experience that I've gotten, the opportunities that I've had have been amazing. But I mean, UT is about the people, you know. So yeah.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Like the sense of community is just like something else. I mean, I remember being on a DCU Journalism Society trip to like Lisbon, I think, in last January. And just what we were going to nightclubs and all, and I'd wake up one day hungover as God knows what, and someone is like, "Oh my God, did you guys see the new polls about Sinn Féin's going to be the most popular party in the election?"
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm very interested, but just let me rest my eyes a little bit. Shout out to...
Yeah, it's like you might be on the phone with someone and you'll both get a notification from RTE News about something, you know, and you can like just do a 180 and whatever you're talking about and just start talking about the notification you both just got, you know.
And yeah, in terms of like the well, this is going to be completely out of date information once this goes up, but the quote unquote recent discourse about the name of the Carryman newspaper, like this Carryman Kerry person thing. Do you have any stance on this issue?
I think the whole thing of, you know, we should rename the Carryman the Kerry person, or Santa should be gender neutral. Like, most sensible feminists don't agree with that stuff, and it just takes away from legitimate issues of, you know, harmful language or like offensive or unequal language. because, you know, the phrase PC gone mad just gets thrown around everywhere. So no, I do not think the Carryman should be renamed the Carry person.
I'd agree completely. It reminds me kind of, I mean, whenever you think of, or you look into some of the things that, I think it was Josepha Manigan, what things that she's been involved in, it's like, it reminds me a bit of the sort of memes you'd see after Biden's election, where it's like, don't worry guys, over in Iraq, the civilians that we killed, bomb was dropped by a female drone pilot. It's grand, like, you know what I mean? Just kind of a change for the sake of looking, you know, different, whatever. But
yeah, I mean, I don't agree with, was it Michael or Danny Healy Ray? It was one of them who said it was ridiculous. I don't agree with the Healy Rays on much, but there you go. gonna
save that soundbite forever now. Just joking. And so yeah, I guess sort of lastly, just to wrap things up, from the experience that you've gathered in your time with the university times, and I mean, maybe you're going to have a completely different answer to this question if I were to ask you in a year time, but do you have any advice for student journalists out there right now, and like how they could sort of reach their biggest sort of journalistic potential despite the sort of havoc that COVID-19 has caused, you know, everything?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a bit unexciting, but just like get involved with your student newspaper or with any sort of student publication. Like the skills you learn from whether it's writing for, you know, a music magazine or the College View or the University Times, like they're skills that can take you anywhere in journalism. You know, writing, editing, layout, copy editing, producing podcasts, that kind of thing. Like that's all in really high demand now. And I think, you know, like you and I think we both agree that like there's such a passion in student newsrooms, and like there are so many people who are so willing to help you, you know. Like as I kept saying during the campaign, like we, you know, the more writers, the more new people we have, the better. The more new ideas we have, the better, you know. So like just get involved in any way you can, and if the first section that you try out doesn't suit you, like there's probably something else that will suit you better, you know. So like just try it. And oh yeah, that's the other thing, like, you know, if you go into college and you join like the soccer team or the musical theatre society, like a lot of those societies, everyone is coming in with years and years of experience. But like by and large in UT, people are starting out from scratch. You know, I had never written any sort of journalistic writing before I started college, and most people start out the same way. So there's no sort of hierarchy going in. You know, we're all going out on the same foot, and I think that's a really, really good thing about UT and about student newspapers in general.
Yeah, I'd agree completely. I mean, like it's a great example yourself of like how accomplished and how, you know, skilled a journalist can be, despite if they didn't actually study journalism. Like it's not a kind of a prerequisite. I mean, you know, you don't necessarily have to follow a rigid path of how to kind of make a career, and the likes of, you don't have to study journalism to get involved with UT or the College View or even like national papers and stuff. Like it's brilliant. And yeah, I'd agree completely. You guys, you heard it here first from Emer Moreau. Just always got to try things out. If one section doesn't work, try another. And yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Emer.
Thank you, Jamie.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Rough Draft, and stay safe. Wear a mask, guys.